We're in the interview portion of today's show. We're with Coach Bielema. Obviously, Brett, thanks so much for giving us time.
Absolutely.
We just brought up a little bit pre-show here, like week 0 stuff. How are you guys' first game of the calendar this year for college football like it was last year? Where do you guys break out this year?
Yeah, so last year we played week 0 against Nebraska. I think there was probably, a half a dozen games on maybe that first week. This year, actually, ironically, last year we were supposed to be week 0 against Nebraska in Ireland because of COVID. That got blown up everywhere. So this year in our conference, there's 3 teams playing. Northwestern's playing Nebraska in Ireland in that same game. And then obviously we're opening up against Wyoming. So I think there's 2 or 3 other games that weekend, but a unique opportunity with week 0 game.
Yeah, because I would imagine there's a good pull for you to motivate the boys about, hey, everybody's been there's nothing like guys like me and Dave sitting around going, dude, we're 3 weeks away from football season. We're 2 weeks. We're 10 days. We're 9. So is that part of the motivation to get the season going where it's like, guys, all the eyes are on us. Like you have an opportunity to make a statement early. Or is it just back to is it still kind of generic, one game at a time? It doesn't really matter.
Carl, I think I don't recall a point in my career where I may have, but I don't think I'd ever played a week 0 game. And I remember getting ready and you would always see these early games and you would be like, well, hey, they're getting it rolling early. And then last year when we played Nebraska, we were fortunate enough to win that game. It was amazing. Obviously, it was my first game, and there's a lot that goes into that. But just the exposure that we got the program that year, a year ago, and then to win it, obviously was just icing on the cake. So I think to capture this again this year, and then the other byproduct of that is you get 2 bye weeks. Everybody else in college football only gets 1 this year, but we get 2 because we play in this week 0 game.
That's awesome. That's awesome because I know that you guys are going to take advantage of that bye week to keep pushing that identity forward. Do you mind just catching up our audience? There's a lot of guys here that are listening that are Illinois fans, but there's other broader college football fans.
Ton of Big Ten fans.
And as someone who's like close as a fan watching the program, like I kind of know what the identity was before you came in and what the changes you are making. But I think it would be helpful if you could kind of explain it in layman's terms of like, what was the identity that you inherited and how is that kind of transitioning or transforming now?
Carl, I've said this, Lovey, obviously, now he's a head coach of an NFL team, right? He had some really strong characteristics in the program that we tried to accentuate that. And then really anything that we didn't maybe see in the same way, we try to transition or mold that to kind of how we see it as coaches. So last year was unique. I told Josh Whitman, our AD, there's never been a time in college football where it had been so advantageous to take over a program because the recruiting rules allowed you really to kind of actively recruit a portal that's never really been exposed before, right? So we were able to bring in transfers, able to bring in grad transfers, and then also our seniors had a bonus year, right? So we were able to keep a lot of those guys for a 6th year of college football. It sounds like a spoof out of a movie back in the day where guys got 6-7 years of college football, but it's really reality that we're in right now. Palcho, who we actually got back for another year because he had a redshirt year hidden in amongst the crowd. He's going into a season where if he starts every game this year, he'll be the most starts in the history of college football. So very, very unique. But I think, to be quite honest, we took over a program that, over the last 20 years hasn't had a lot of success. So we had a lot of positives that we could move to, gravitate to. I know Dave's a big Northwestern fan, and, I showed those guys right out of the gate, if you want to get to where we want to go over the last 5 years prior to last year, the team that had won the Big Ten West had either been Northwestern or Wisconsin. Northwestern had done it twice. Wisconsin had done it 3 over the last 5 years. So for us to be able to end the season last year with a victory over Northwestern and the way that we did it, I think our guys got a lot of confidence, out of that moment and hopefully carried us forward. We were a 5-7 team. Didn't make a bowl game. We were 1 short. We played 12 games where 2 games were kind of lopsided losses, but the other 10 were very close games. We won 5 and we lost 5. And the truth is that we were probably somewhere in the middle of that. But I like the way our guys are handling this year so far.
How are you navigating the transfer portal? Because it's got to be the wild, wild west out there. I mean, you see every single year that the season ends, it's like so-and-so quarterback, USC quarterback, UNC, it could be anybody from everywhere. I think I read 50% of scholarship quarterbacks in the last that have been in the last two recruiting classes have been in the portal. So what are you guys doing to navigate around that to kind of bring those guys to Champaign, or, kind of facilitate guys to go maybe to a lower division, ISU or something like that?
Great point, Dave. So our top two quarterbacks who are kind of battling it out, we're both transfers. Art Zukowski is a transfer from Rutgers that I grabbed 2 springs ago. And then Tommy DeVito came in January of this year as a transfer from Syracuse, and then really last year's starter with Art was Brandon Peters, who he wasn't in the portal necessarily, but he was a transfer from Michigan. I think the numbers for quarterbacks generally spike a little bit higher than any other position, just because I think if they aren't finding a light of where they're at, they naturally look for someplace different. I was very fortunate my previous stop in this conference to be at Wisconsin that I was able to grab Russell Wilson for a grad transfer that obviously not only changed the direction of his life, but the program that we were at. If we didn't have him in that year, we probably would have had a good year, but not the Big Ten championship, and not the Rose Bowl experience that our guys got. So, you just take a case in point. I mentioned earlier, obviously, I know you're a Northwestern fan. They have a young man that transferred from Donnie Navarro, who played for us against Northwestern in the last game of the year. Now he's there, and we actually have a young man, T-Rod Edwards, who's a D lineman.
Yep. He's a CPS kid too.
Place. Yeah. So it's just kind of ships passing in the night, a little bit here and there, but it's a very unique time in college football.
Now, how do you factor the NIL into that? So I don't quite know the rules myself. That also seems like the Wild West. Do you guys have like a fund set up with different donors and different companies, or?
I think that's NCAA infraction territory, Dave.
I'm not sure that it is or not.
You're not putting my coach in the hot seat, are you?
But I saw something at not Axios, Alvius or something, that Northwestern, Oklahoma State, LSU, and like a couple other blue blood big time programs all kind of join this. It's like an NIL head where they kind of do that as a third party for the organizations. And it's like you either have to have guys that are making good money to compete for the Big Ten championships, because OSU, the top 10 or 15 programs are all going to have that. How do the maybe B-level and lower programs as it sits right now, like Illinois, Northwestern, Iowa, schools that aren't the LSUs of the world, how are they navigating that, to compete for those big recruits?
To be honest, it's kind of a case by case. So, for instance, us here at Illinois, we're governed. To be quite honest, the biggest deciding factor, especially in the early stages of this NIL world, was really state laws. Because it had kind of grown outside of the NCAA, there were certain rules that were prohibitive. Some of them were restrictive on what people could do and say. So about midway through the summer, they changed the laws here in the state of Illinois, which allowed the Department of Athletics here at Illinois to get a little bit, our DA to get a little bit more involved. So it's a little bit of a combo platter. There's a lot of our guys that are getting independent deals. We have anything from guys that are working with our local boys and girls clubs, food banks, independent donors that reach out to our guys. We have guys that, Chase and Sidney Brown, who are two of our better players, are Canadian. They're under student visas, so they have to do all their NIL work when they're at home in Canada.
Okay.
We got a guy, Luke Ford, who's got a WWE deal, who I'm expecting him to jump from the top rope here at any day into a live stream audience. But it's really kind of a moving target. One that we embrace. I think as coaches, we would, guarantee, I would guess most go, I know I do, anything that can proactively help our players, we're in favor of, right? Like, what you do have to do is kind of massage and manage what's going on. Like we have a young man that got a car, right? Like he got a really nice car, right? And all of a sudden he's showing up in that. He hasn't been here all that much, but because of that, right, that brought a lot of questions up in the meeting room. So my idea, my utopia would be to paint all. I have 85 scholarship players, just like everybody else.
Yep.
If we could paint every one of those guys with the same brush, just kind of as a baseline, right? And then kind of build on it from there. You're naturally, your good players, your high level guys are going to naturally get better players. Like, it's no secret. Like Kofi last year for basketball, I would guess, I haven't seen the numbers. My guess is he did very well, right? Maybe so better than the guy that was backing him up. It's just human nature. So the good thing is, Carl knows this, we have a lot of living alumni. We have 50,000 students on campus every year, which gives us a huge alumni base, which just, obviously promotes a lot of great opportunities for our guys.
Yeah. So what are, we've talked a little bit, I think last time you were on the show, we did a fun thing where it was like, all right, come into my living room right now and recruit.
Right.
White Sox Dave's a big quarterback, but that was from a high school perspective. So I guess tying together some of the transfer stuff, tying together some of the NIL stuff, and then applying it specifically to the University of Illinois. Like, can you go into Dave's living room again? Can we say he's a junior standout transfer, big arm quarterback from Northwestern, maybe a little bit of a problem away from the field, kind of hard to coach and stuff, but the type of guy, if you get the most out of him, he's going to the next level. We don't have to go full role play, but what are those, like, maybe if it's 3 big things, or do you have it, like, what does that pitch kind of look like for a guy like Dave?
Absolutely. I'll role play with you. All right. So, hey, Dave, I can't tell you as a prospect that I'm recruiting what I'm going to give you, but I can tell you Carl came to a spring game. He took advantage of the opportunities that he had. He threw strikes when they needed to be thrown. He completed touchdowns. Touchdowns become, big factors in winning games. And because of that, he secured a $100,000 NIL deal, right, that ensures, right, not only for him to have success while he's here at Illinois, but gives him a nest egg to move beyond. So he's a current player on our roster that's been able to be involved and gain these deals through the NIL. And that's something that I think you could, eventually see if you were able to come here, be a part of. That would be the ballpark of what we're talking about, right? So even though we can't promise, right, what a young man may get, right, you can talk about what guys on our campus have received. And I'll just kind of leave it at that. That's really the lay of the land. You can't in any way, shape, or form talk to someone that you're recruiting about what they will get when they get there.
Okay.
What you can talk about is the perspective of what our current players are getting, right? And what they've been able to secure. So there's a lot of things. I think, listen, overall, NIL is an unbelievable opportunity for our players. I do think there's some guardrails that everybody would say that they kind of need to be in place. It's kind of like in the years past, you've only been able to have 85 scholarships. You've only been able to sign 25 guys within a year. But because of the transfer portal, you may have 35, 40 guys that have left that have, left a scholarship, and you could only sign 25. So I might have 10 scholarships, but I couldn't give them out. That made no sense. So the NCAA came in and allowed us. Now basically you have 85 moving scholarships that, hey, if one guy comes in and needs a scholarship and another guy has already left, I can literally give it to him that day. So there's some things that are moving in the right direction, but definitely a work in progress.
That's interesting, because specifically to see, I didn't know that those are the rules, that you can't say like this is what you could get, but you can use what has been done historically. I think that rule makes sense. Is there any crossover where you're working with Coach Underwood, or do you find yourself leaning into, you brought up Kofi earlier, obviously he's just such a big name and did well for himself. Are there rules against saying hey, this is what, some of the big athletes on campus have done? Or are you just more specific, here's what our quarterbacks or here's what our football players have done?
Carl, it's a great perspective, right? Obviously I talked to Coach Underwood quite a bit. He and I are, just engaged in different conversations as the head men's basketball and the head football coach. There's a lot of different events, and he and I kind of think a lot alike, and to be honest about what we do. But really, to Josh's credit, Mike Smalls, our golf coach, right? I talked to him quite a bit. Dan Hartlib, our baseball coach, we've Shauna Green, our new women's basketball coach. He's built an environment here where we really lean on each other. We just hired a track coach that Petros that is coming in that has national championship backgrounds, right? So one of the things that has happened, I'll talk to Brad, hey, we're sending over this player. When they were playing on a Sunday to win a Big Ten championship in basketball, we had a bunch of recruits on campus, and he allowed those guys to come over and watch, and he met with them individually, which I'm forever grateful. But one of the coolest things that happened is Kofi literally grabbed one of our recruits and said, hey, I love playing here. I love being in Illinois, but I can never be him. And he pointed to Isle's jersey, right? Because Isle's from Illinois, at Illinois. He goes, I can never be him, but you can, right? And that literally changed the script for us on a prospect. So it's an awesome environment to be a part of right now, and really, really speaks well to what Josh is building here at Illinois.
Did you lock that recruit up?
Yeah, I can't comment about current prospects, but I would say we did very well, I think.
Okay.
Stop trying to sabotage my program.
Here's a question I got for you. On that note, so we interviewed Pat Fitzgerald 2-3 years back, and we asked him, the one who got away, and he told us the story how he was out with his family. I think he said he was at Disney World actually, and he gets a call from Andrew Luck, and he sees it's Andrew Luck. He knew Andrew Luck was making his decision, and I'm pretty sure this is past the statute of limitations because it happened so long ago. Commenting on other commits, whatever, but he thought he was calling him to say, "Hey, I'm committing to you, coach." Obviously, you went to Stanford. So obviously it didn't happen. Do you have a story? It could have been at Arkansas or Wisco or wherever else you coach, of one that got away where you're like, damn, that would have been amazing.
I don't know if it's anything about getting away. I mean, you probably remember the ones you get more than the ones you
it's probably a better way to look at it. Glass half full.
I distinctly remember it was kind of one of those moments where we talked earlier about Russell, right? So one of my favorite memories, he was at NC State. He was playing minor league baseball, right? Mm-hmm. And he came on his visit, and he had visited Auburn, and he had visited us. And Auburn, that was a year they had just won a national championship. Cam Newton was a first-round pick. He was a Heisman Trophy winner, and it was us and Auburn. And I distinctly remember Russ went to Auburn first, and he came to our place, and we only had him for one night. Usually a visit takes 2 nights, but he was only there one night. We tried to jam as much into it as we could. I thought it had gone really well. And I just kind of, as a head coach, you have these moments where you're like, all right, what do you want to close this with? How do you want to say this? And I knew it was us in Auburn, but he was also in the back of his mind toying with, do I even want to play college football anymore? He had gotten drafted in baseball. Him and his dad had talked a lot about getting drafted in both sports. So one X factor that was there hanging in the weeds was, do I not even play college football anymore? Do I just pursue baseball? And he was leaving my office, and I grabbed him. I said, Russ, enjoyed the last 24 hours. You saw this, and this. We don't really talk about what goes on at other visits. I know he had already been to Auburn and what they had done. But I said this when he was leaving my office. I said, Russ, let me tell you something. If you don't play for me, I said, go play for Auburn, right? Because college football and the game of football needs you, right? And I said that, and I kind of took a moment afterwards, and I'm like, boy, I hope I just didn't send it off. But I felt it was going our way. And then he called me up a little bit later on and told me he was coming. And there are those little moments where you say things that, they sound good and you feel good, but you really don't know how they're going to play out. And obviously that one worked.
Yeah, like telling the girl where it's like, I just want to see you happy. Like if it's not me, make someone it's someone happy. Like,
and you're always lying when you say that. Yeah, every single time. It's just lying to their face.
I can't speak to that. That's just your guys' point of view.
You brought up the spring game. I guess thank you. Obviously, I get a lot of questions about that from my friends and people that come up. It's like when I bump into my buddies. We were just playing golf in Erin Hills a couple of weeks ago, and it was a group of Illinois baseball guys, and we're on the tee box. There's like 8 of us, and I mean, like, we're not even together for 5 minutes, and it's instantly, it's like, all right, Stirk, what the hell? What's the story? How the hell did you get on the field? So this isn't really as much. I guess it is a question. I want to say thank you for letting me do that, but like, for the people that don't believe me when I'll tell this story down the road, can I why did you have me come play quarterback? How does that shape up on your end? I guess too, at a bigger level of like, from a standpoint of making things fun and because I get it too, right? It's the Barstool guy, played baseball here and stuff. There's a great connection, and I love. You have no idea how much I love the fact that we get to talk about the football team that I still have this connection with the university, how much the school means to me. But even so, what the hell am I doing playing quarterback in the spring game, Coach?
Well, it's kind of interesting. Goes way back. This is my going into my 14th year as a head coach. And when I'm back at Wisconsin, we would always kind of try to find things to make the spring game a little bit unusual, not only for our fans, but for our players. I always say this, the game of football, the first time anybody played it, it wasn't because it was in front of 80,000 people. It wasn't because it was national TV. It's because somebody rolled a ball out on the ground and said, hey, let's play football and have some fun, And when I was at Arkansas, we had an incredible young man named Kanan Sandy, who was still one of my good friends, who was a huge super fan. And we invited him one spring to join us, and we designed a play. And Kanan took the play and ran it into a touchdown for an end zone. And much to my surprise, Kanan, who could kind of be a ham, turned it into a touchdown dance. Our guys are going crazy. It was just an incredible moment. It was really warm, right? And then that kind of converted to, I think, maybe 2 years later, we invited someone from the SEC network to catch a pass, right? And then we allowed someone to throw a pass. And then I'm like, I need someone who can throw the ball with some accuracy. And to be quite honest, between Brett and Pat Pearson, they're like, hey, Barstool Carl will probably be the guy. And I said, hey, what do you mean? And they're like, well, he's a baseball player. I knew you were, but I didn't know your baseball background, right? So this is honestly how it started. I called Big Cat, right? Like I had known him from previous stop at Wisco with his red and white blood, right? That bleeds through. So I hit him up. He sent me your number. That's how we connected. But the part you probably don't know is this. I said, hey, I told our whole crew, I put your bio up there, kind of explained your story. I said, hey, the first time he's out there, like, we're not going to rush. We're going to kind of play dead, let him kind of stand back there and, throw it. And he's going to think that's how it is. I go, the second time, I said, every offensive lineman, just let your guy go and rush the living you-know-what out of him. And everybody scream as they're coming at him, right? Because he's going to take by surprise. So yeah. I didn't know, to your credit, I had no idea how you were going to handle it. I didn't know if you were going to fall down, you were going to bail out of there, and you threw a strike before they got there, which I was like, holy cow, I can't believe he just did that.
I had poop in my pants. I definitely had chocolate pudding in my underpants when they were coming through. And just like a funny thing that happened on that second play is the first play, I'm super nervous. I got butterflies. I have no idea what I'm doing. Like I was nervous the second I got in the car and was driving down. Like, what? Why
yeah, I'd be shitting my pants.
Doing? And for the second play, I'm going out there and I'm cocky. I'm calling the play in the huddle, double XY, banana flip 2. And we get up to the line. I do I bring my knee up and I get ready to clap and I kind of jog up behind the center and I point. I'm like, 54 is the mic, 54 is the mic. And 54 takes his mouthpiece out and he's like, hey, knock that shit off, Carl. And just puts his mouthpiece back in. And it was like, I was like, yeah, I guess I should probably knock that shit off.
Coach,
and then he came in.
You know that scene in The Waterboy where there's the SCLSU Mud Dogs, and then like Michigan tried to Talboy, and they have the clip of him going over the middle and he gets decapitated.
Yeah.
I wish you would have actually done that. I really wish you would have actually let him hit him.
I did tell him that they could run by him and scream, but they couldn't touch him. I didn't know if he was going to be one of those ambulance chasers and sue us if he got hurt or anything. So I didn't.
Make him sign a waiver. We're all good.
That is smart, though. I did go to law school just enough to understand the risk liability. I did drop out. Now we're talking about this. I think there could be an interesting crossover here.
I mean, Fitz he's got to get some eyeballs on the program right now. Bad year last year. I think the best way to do that would be to let me return punts or play scout team for him or something. Run scouts for him.
Do you guys need a punching bag for Northwestern week where it's like, we're going to bring Dave down. We can just put him in a purple uniform. And you're like senior day, like before you run on the field, like the opening scene of Rudy where you get to tackle the tackling dump, but it's White Sox Dave. Like all the seniors get to lay Dave out.
I was voted hardest hitter my freshman and sophomore years at Wheat-Morville South High School.
Any interest?
And that was in football?
That was in football, yes. Yeah. By my teammates, mind you.
Well, two things. I'm not going to give Fitz any. If there's a guy that I honestly respect in this conference, it's Fitz. Like what he's done. Honestly, last year when we're getting ready to play him, they beat Illinois 6 years in a row. And I said, before we can try to even compete with them, we got to respect them because what they've done is unprecedented. So I understand and hear what you're saying, but I think they're going to be all right. Would be my guess.
They'll be fine. They'll be good. It's a good program.
So one of my confidants about football is my cousin Matthew was a starting left tackle for Illinois Wesleyan for all 4 years. He was down there 3 years. If I offended somebody, I'm sorry. And he's just like a blue-blooded offensive lineman. He's a CPA now. He's a consultant, does his stuff, but you got to give credit for those guys that love football so much that he's like, I'm going D3. I'm going to play. I'm going to build my relationships. I'm still going to go to school. I love the game that much. He's a great guy for me to talk about football because he's always just like talking about stuff I'm not really looking for. And one thing he told me when we hired you, Coach, is he's like, you have no idea how big your offensive line is going to get. Like if there's one thing Bielema teams do is they just load up on the offensive line. They're always bigger than the guys they stack up against. So I'm curious, can you give me like a progress report on the size of our team? Can you validate that that's part of your philosophy is having the big boys?
I honestly don't, go recruit offensive linemen just if they're big, right? They got to be good. But I do think when big people talk, people listen usually, right? And we have probably recruited a little bit more to that world than ever before, at least during the recent history here at Illinois. I think as we had guys come, visiting coaches, buddies of mine, NFL people, when they came in the spring and this summer, and they saw what our O-line looked like, they I could tell by their reaction, very positive, right? Yeah, Palcho probably is our most career start guy. He looks better. He's actually weighing about 315, 318, but he looks like he weighs about 280. He's leaned up, looks really good. Julian Pearl is bigger than he's ever been, looks good. Pilstrom is looking great at center. They added a couple of junior college guys, Zy Chrysler. He came in at 358. I believe he's down to 328. And Isaiah Adams, we brought in about 300, 305. He's up about 320 now. So we've kind of added and subtracted on some guys. And we brought in one young man from Denmark, who I believe is 6'8", 310. We brought him in from out of country. So, yeah, we hopefully are going to take some steps in the right direction.
Well, that's great. That's honestly the identity that like a fan base can get behind, especially this part of the country and like what Illinois football is. Because I think realistically, like you've talked about it, me growing up as an Illinois guy, I'm realistic about who we are. And I've always thought the successful Illinois football teams are the ones that have like committed identities. Like we're the Ron Zook teams, that was a good era for Illinois football. They had a clear defined identity. The same thing with the Ron Turner era. Like he was pumping out receivers and pro style quarterbacks. And I remember John Bucher comes over from Iowa and like he puts up 3,000 yards. And like that was an identity. Now I'm not saying that, those are identities that compete at the, at the absolute top, but it was still an identity. And I get the sense that like, that's where you're taking this team and this identity of like, we're going to run the ball. We're going to be tough. We're not going to give up. I love what you just said, or at the top when you were talking about the schedule and saying like, yeah, there were 2 games. Okay. But the 5-5 and we played tough. I remember that Penn State game. For years I've been watching Illinois football, and those are the type of games you just narrowly fumble. And it's like, I do get the sense that this identity and this shift is turning, and it's really exciting from my end. And this is something
it's even exciting from my end because like Carl's always talking to me as a Northwestern fan, like, oh, Dave, you hate Illinois. I don't hate Illinois at all. I just don't care about Illinois. And I think it's probably reciprocated because neither team has ever been like really good at the same time. So I know it's the in-state rivalry. You guys compete on the field and off the field for recruits against each other all the time. But Illinois is nowhere near my hatred scale like Notre Dame is, for instance. I would love to be able to hate Illinois. And I'm sure it's reciprocated from your guys then, like on a friendly, ball-busting, competitive level,
Yeah.
So,
well, I think twofold. First, I appreciate what you're saying. And I think in the Big Ten West, right, like, to be honest, in recruiting,
it's going to be a good, deep league this year in the West.
Northwestern, we recruit obviously against them because of it, but we probably actually recruit against the Minnesota, Iowas, Wisconsin's a little bit more. Northwestern has such a national recruiting base because of all the academics and everything that goes into play. But I would also say, I think if you saw us now, we're bigger in the offensive line and defensive line. But, when you mentioned Ron Zook, I remember the skill players he had. Really, you saw guys that really took this program to a different level. And I think as you go out and watch us practice, the length that we have now is really, it jumps out to you. The length of our wide receivers, our DBs, really the speed that I think we're going to be able to play with. It's nowhere close to this roster that I think we can get to, but it's definitely a step in the right direction.
Last question from me, Coach. Again, thanks for your time.
Yeah.
Last time you were on, we talked about, we asked you to single out if it was a player or 2 players or something in your head, guys that aren't going to get the national recognition this year. The scouts aren't showing up to see these guys, but as a head coach, college football guy, football man, you love coaching these guys. You know that they're leaders in the can we just give some credit to maybe some guys that really bring the team together that aren't going to be on the cover of Phil Steele's magazine?
Yeah, I don't like to put pressure on freshmen, but and I know, Carl, you're a Brother Rice guy. We signed a young man out of Brother Rice, that Henry Boyer, who big, long tight end. He's been very impressive. I told a story the other day, the media, he got into it with one of our outside linebackers, and they literally got in a fight over because Henry thought Gabe took his rep, right? So they got mad because and literally got in a little scuffle because he was taking work away from him, another Chicago area kid. I know you guys know Olin Kreutz, his son James, who came in. I just coached him today on kickoff return. He's very, very athletic. He loves the physicality of the game. I don't know how much it's going to play into this year, but I would say getting James recruits on campus this year has been very, very positive. A couple returning guys, I think the emergence of Tip Ryman could be a big part to our offense. Obviously Chase Brown and Josh McCray have done good, but I think there's a couple other running backs in the room that might make some noise. And then in the return game, took a young man out of South Dakota that is originally from Iowa, Cody Case, that one of the transfers that he's at least shown he can catch the football and do some stuff in the return game. Might be a dynamic player for us to keep an eye on as well.
I love it. Thank you for the insight, Coach. Thank you so much for your time. This is such a busy time and exciting time of the year for you guys. And my big takeaway from spending a day with you guys, I don't think anybody understands that you're closer to a CEO than you are to like what people understand of a traditional high school football coach or like the JV high school football. Like the amount of stuff, I couldn't believe. There's hundreds upon hundreds of people in the football building getting ready for the spring game. Staff here, trainer there, players here, equipment guys, this and that, marketing this. You got the AD people and donors and recruits. And it really is amazing. And again, thank you for your time. I know how busy you guys are. You've got some major fans listening to this. What's the best way for NIL, if I'm an Illinois alum listening to this, and I wanted to like get involved and kind of donate, because I know there's a lot of opportunities to donate, but then it's like, oh, well, that money goes to scholarships or building resources. Like, is there a specific NIL fund where I know that money's going to go to recruiting and retaining good talent?
Yeah, the Illini Guardians is a collective that you can obviously reach out to them, and they're really home based out of some Chicago area people, but also just reaching out to our athletic department. You can kind of do through your own independent deal, right? I see your beef kit. NIL deal in front of you, right?
We'll send you one.
If you wanted to, involve that, or somehow there's a million ways that you can directly help our student athletes in an NIL world that you can reach out to our athletic department and make that happen.
Yeah, the wheels are spinning on my end. I've got some follow-ups and stuff, maybe some merch and some player interviews and stuff. But again, Coach, thank you so much. Good luck this season. We're just such Big Ten football guys.
We are. We interviewed last year. You're our first Big Ten coach this year, but last year we interviewed probably half the conference, maybe.
Yeah,
close to half the conference, and
you're our favorite.
It's weird saying, like, once you get to know him on this is the first time we've ever spoken, but you get to know him on a small personal level. It's like, I hate that I like that guy, So, but good luck aside from the last game of the regular season. I hope it's a bloodbath in the Purple's direction.
All right, that's enough.
But
we love you,
thank
Coach.
you for coming on.
All right,
appreciate it, man.
safe to the team.
Dave, have a great.
Yeah, we'll see you week 0, I&I.